Canadian Pacific was built at Eastleigh Works in December 1941 and entered service on the 13th of January 1942. The locomotive formed part of a Merchant Navy class designed by Oliver Bulleid for the Southern Railway. The Merchant Navies consisted of 30 express passenger locomotives of the Pacific wheel arrangement, i.e. 462. The first Merchant Navy locomotive to be completed at Eastleigh Works was 21C1 Channel Packet. It was unveiled and named on the 10th of March 1941 by the then Minister for Transport. The locomotive then worked a three-coat special from Eastleigh to Alresford, where the party had sandwiches before returning to Eastleigh. This was the first time that Alresford was to see a Merchant Navy, but it certainly would not be the last. The class were named after the various shipping companies, and followed a long and close association between the Southern Railway and its docks in Southampton, and the ships that served them. Before the advent of the airline industry and aircraft capable of crossing the Atlantic, Southampton Docks was one of the gateways to the world. As originally built, the class contained a number of new radical design features, including an air-smooth casing, electric lights, steam-operated fire doors, and a chain-driven valve gear, rather than a linkage. Based on an internal combustion engine, where the moving parts are enclosed in an oil-tight compartment, it would reduce the time for preparation, reduce the risk of dirt getting into the parts, and above all was lighter. The design made the locomotives very responsive, and indeed very fast, given the power-to-weight advantage. However, the new radical design had many teething problems, mostly as a result of the technology and materials of the time being limited, and the facilities and trying to maintain them. The valve timing started to become more unpredictable as the chains became worn and stretched, a problem that isn't as prevalent with traditional linkage drives. It also was a problem keeping the oil bath compartment free from leaks. Named at Victoria Station on the 27th of March 1942, having been initially based at Salisbury, the Loco was transferred to Exmouth Junction in Devon. She was transferred again in 1948 to Nine Elms in London, where she was fitted with a mechanical stoker, whereby coal is mechanically fed from the tender to the firebox and directed into the fire with steam jets. As part of the trials, the Loco was evaluated at the new test facility at Rugby in February 1950, where there was a rolling road to check power outputs and efficiencies in a controlled environment. Whether she strained something during the process is not clear, but in the September of that year, whilst working a Waterloo to Bournemouth train, the valve timing chain snapped, destroying the oil bath and most of the valve gear within it. The stoker remained fitted until 1951, where it was removed and the Loco returned to conventional firing. Merchant navies were known for their excellent steaming ability, largely thanks to the Bulleid boiler, and ran very smoothly at high speeds. A number of the innovations originally applied to the class, such as chain-driven drives and air-smooth casing, were removed during rebuilding at Eastleigh Works, and this cured many ills. With the rebuilding of all 30 of the class from 1956, the southern region as it then was had the most modern express passenger locomotives in the country, the British Railway built Britannia class builds having ceased just 2 years earlier. The rebuilding at Eastleigh Works under the guidance of Ron Jarvis retained many of the good parts of the original design, whilst undoubtedly simplifying them into a more conventional form and thus making them easier to maintain. Canadian Pacific was rebuilt in May 1959. One of the features retained were the brilliantly smooth steam passages from the boiler to the cylinders and the exhaust. This meant they were very free running, but does mean that a lot of steam can be sent to the cylinders very quickly, and as such can make the type prone to wheel slip, so careful handling was required. Canadian Pacific's final shed was Weymouth, moving there in September 1964, and she was finally withdrawn in October 1965, having covered 976,806 miles in service. She was then sent to Barry Scrapyard in South Wales. Rescued and restored to working order, she again returned to the main line, including working the green train on her old stomping grounds from Waterloo to Bournemouth and Exeter. By now very tired and in need of a very comprehensive overhaul, 35005 was withdrawn from service. Canadian Pacific moved to her birthplace at Eastleigh Works via rail on September 22, 2011, where she was stripped for assessment of her works and costings. Since this time, and following a successful bid from the Heritage Lottery Fund, the overhaul has been started alongside a large outreach project. The overhaul has involved the complete replacement of the inner firebox, a first in preservation for this type, as well as the replacement of 2/3 of the outer firebox on the backhead. This work is progressing well, though once the fireboxes are fitted, there will then be the task of drilling and fitting over 2,000 stays that support the firebox plates and then the tubes. It's fair to say that Ropley, and indeed many other railways, have not carried out a boiler repair of this size and complexity to this date.
In the last days of steam, merchant navies would regularly break the magical 100-mile-an-hour mark. In fact, one of our drivers, now retired, was clocked 4 days before the end of steam in 1967 doing 102 on 35008 Orient Line near Andover. It's safe to say towards the end the drivers did well and truly go for it. Now here on the Mid-Hants Railway we actually have 3 other Bulleid type locomotives, namely Weybridge, Swanage and Sir Frederick Pyle. All built at Brighton Works, these are what were known as Bulleid Light Pacifics, which were essentially lighter and shorter versions of the Merchant Navy class with slightly smaller boilers and cylinders. Now they weren't as powerful as Merchant Navies, but because of their lightweight capabilities, they were capable of operating around a greater proportion of the region, including rural lines with restricted axle loads. Sir Frederick Pyle was built in 1947 and formed part of the Battle of Britain class, which were named after subjects associated with the Battle of Britain, which took place in 1940. Many of the class were named after squadrons of the RAF, including, for example, 92 Squadron, which visited us a few years ago. The locomotive is now at Alresford waiting overhaul, which will restore it back into running condition. In fact, here is a photo of the grandson of Sir Frederick Pyle, Anthony Pyle, when he came down to visit us at Alresford in 2018. Weybridge and Swanage are what are known as unrebuilt Bulleid Light Pacifics because, well, they never got rebuilt. Although the same design as the Battle of Britain class, they instead were named after destinations in the West Country, for example, Weybridge and Swanage. Weybridge entered service in 1945, being one of the first batch of West Country locomotives to roll off the production line. The class were originally numbered with a system derived from a French style of numbering, with Weybridge being numbered 21C107. Let me break that down a little bit. The 107 at the end refers to the engine itself, so 107 is Weybridge. All the West Country's numbering system starting from 101 working upwards. Now the 2 at the other end, at the front, refers to the number of axles on the leading bogie, in this case 2. The 1 represents the number of axles on the trailing bogie, in this case 1. And the C represents the number of axles that are driven from the cylinders, in this case 3. Now we do sort of refer to the engines in a similar way, but in a slightly easier way to understand. So instead of axles we look at wheels and we work from front to back. So a Bulleid Light Pacific is a 462, so you've got 4 wheels on the leading bogie, 6 driving wheels and 2 wheels on the trailing bogie. Nice and easy. If you want another example, Thomas the Tank Engine, he is an 060, so he's got no leading axle, he's got 6 driving wheels and no trailing axle. Nice and easy. Now, where were we? Yes. After Weybridge rolled off the production line, she was assigned to Exmouth Junction, moving to 9 Elms in 1951, where she was renumbered to 34007 in line with the introduction of tops. She then moved to Salisbury in 1964 and was withdrawn a year later. She was then rescued from Barry by the Plym Valley Railway and was restored to running order at the Bodmin and Wenford Railway. She arrived at the railway in 2008, being withdrawn for overhaul in 2016. Currently she is still in the queue for overhaul, but hopefully it won't be too long before we'll be able to get her into the workshop and start work. And there you have it folks, 4 Bulleids on the line, and hopefully in the not too distant future you'll be able to ride behind 2 of them, not just at their home in the south, but at their home at the Mid-Hants Railway for Watercress Line.